Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we're going to be talking about all of the players that I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will and will not re-sign before the start of free agency. So guys, without further ado, let's talk about it. Now, the Buccaneers have 25 players that have expiring contracts that need to be addressed before the start of free agency. Now, I have categorized these players into three different types of categories. The first category is the starters. This was obviously players for the Buccaneers who were starters in the 2019 season. High-end role players and backup players. These were, as it says, high-end role players and backup players. Guys who had a, significant amount of play and role on the team worth noting in the 2019 season as well. And then finally you have veterans and other backups. These are guys who would more likely than not be competing for roster spots, and honestly their chances of going to free agency might be kind of high given certain circumstances. So let's actually get started with that category, the veteran and other backup players category. First two players I want to talk about on this list are Darian Stewart, Josh Wells, Gerald Hawkins, Jaden Mickens, and Orion Stewart. Now, actually, fun fact is, while I was getting ready to record this video, I noticed that Jaden Mickens has already been re-signed to some form of contract. He will hopefully be competing for a Buccaneers roster spot come the 2020 training camp, unless something crazy happens and he is unfortunately released. But aside from him, you have Darian Stewart, Josh Wells, Gerald Hawkins, and Orion Stewart. Starting off with Orion Stewart first, the Buccaneers secondary group has gotten very, quickly deep very fast. You have a lot of draft picks there, a lot of former free agent signings as well that are really just clogging up the system for guys like Orion Stewart. I think that he will be let go into free agency. Next, you have offensive tackles Gerald Hawkins and Josh Wells. First off, Gerald Hawkins. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers traded for him from the Pittsburgh Steelers after the end of the preseason, and he got very little to no playing time. This one could go either way. Bruce Arians said he did like what he saw from the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line during the preseason, so he traded for Gerald Hawkins, and then Gerald Hawkins just never got any playing time. Actually, players like Earl Watford and Josh Wells got playing time over a guy like Gerald Hawkins, to the point where Gerald Hawkins was inactive for a lot of games. So I think with all of that being said, I think the Buccaneers are going to look to upgrade their backup offensive line, and I think a guy like Gerald Hawkins just doesn't fit into the formula right now. I think he will go off into free agency. Josh Wells, no, I think the Buccaneers could very much upgrade very easily from Josh Wells at the backup tackles positions. When I saw Josh Wells in it games, I was not impressed under any circumstances. He needed a lot of help, either A, with Ali Marpet, or B, with O.J. Howard helping him block as well. So yeah, with all that being said, Josh Wells, he can go into free agency as well. And then finally, Darian Stewart, much like what I said with Orion Stewart, really deep safety core right now in terms of the matter of they have a lot of draft picks there, they have some impressive backups there, and they'll be looking to upgrade at that position as well. So Darian Stewart, I think he will go off and join another team, maybe return to the Denver Broncos, maybe not, but I think he's better off going into free agency as well. Next couple of guys I want to mention, Sam Acho and Bryant Mitchell, and I love Bryant Mitchell. I think that he could be a really productive wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially given the circumstances of, again, besides Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Brashad Perriman, it seems like there is a big black hole in terms of the depth of the Buccaneers wide receiver chart. So many unknowns, so I think that Bryant Mitchell could have a lot to gain by coming back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was looking impressive too in training camp and in preseason, and I would like to think that he would have been on the practice squad if he had not gotten injured. The Buccaneers could always tender him as a restricted free agent. I think that that is the route they will go. I would definitely like to see Bryant Mitchell back with the team. Sam Acho, I wouldn't mind giving him the veteran minimum, letting him come back and compete for a backup pass rusher spot, in terms of, counting him in for the 2020 training camp, having him in for the 2020 preseason. Sam Acho, bring him back. He's a veteran guy. He's going to be 32 years old. Just have him compete a little bit, have him be a camp body. And if he says no, then, that's fine, letting him go into free agency. But I very much like what I saw from Sam Acho in the very, very limited time that he had with the team. Finally, the last three guys I want to talk about in this category: Blaine Gabbert, Andrew Adams, and Tanner Hudson. Now, Tanner Hudson, he can also be brought back on a tender, as he is a restricted free agent, I guess I should say, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So definitely offer him that tender, bring him back as a restricted free agent. Andrew Adams, I would also be fine with him getting a veteran minimum, having him come back, compete for a backup safety spot. The past 2 seasons, whenever Andrew Adams has been brought back to have some amount of a role with the team, he's shown that he can be a pretty decent backup, or even, fringe starter type of safety. So really hoping that he can come back and compete for some type of roster spot for the Buccaneers this upcoming season. And then finally, Blaine Gabbert. I wouldn't mind the Buccaneers bringing back Blaine Gabbert and having him compete for the backup quarterback job. Now, whatever they're going to do with the starting quarterback job, we will talk about that in a little bit, but I'm totally fine with Blaine Gabbert being a part of this quarterback room. I think he can be a solid backup, and I don't think he would cost that much money. I believe he only made $1 million with the Buccaneers this past season, so maybe you bring him back on a $2.5 million deal, something like that. Have him compete for a backup quarterback job. I would have, no objections to that kind of move. With that category out of the way, let's start talking about some of these high-end role players. Now, the first two guys I want to talk about are Anthony Auclair and Michael Lidke. Two guys that you might have forgot about. They kind of got lost in the shuffle this past season. They both suffered some injuries that pretty much knocked them out for the entirety of the year. In the case of Michael Lidke, he was literally out the entire year. And then in the case of Anthony Auclair, I think he lasted a few games before he suffered an injury that knocked him out for the rest of the year, which led to Tanner Hudson getting more playing time and even getting a roster spot for the remainder of the season as well. Both these guys, they are restricted free agents, so offer them that restricted free agent tender. Let's bring them back. In the case of Michael Lidke, people forget this, but Michael Lidke was a very solid backup offensive lineman for the Buccaneers. He could play tackle, he could play guard, he could play center, he could do a lot of things. So I'm totally fine with Michael Lidke coming back. I think he could be a very, very capable backup offensive lineman, and I think that even the Buccaneers missed him a little bit with him being out with injury. And then also in the case of Anthony Auclair, he does a lot of stuff pretty good. He's a pretty decent receiving tight end, and he's a very decent blocking tight end as well. He has a nice balanced skill set going on that I think could very much benefit the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He would be again competing with Tanner Hudson, so we could always bring back that competition, and that would be a lot of fun. So both these guys, I think they're very, very solid backups that could contribute to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, easily be on the 53-man roster in some form or capacity. And yeah, I would very much like them being brought back on the restricted free agent tenders. Next two guys I want to talk about, Earl Watford and Bo Allen. Now, Earl Watford, would he take the veteran minimum to stay? That's a very, very good question that, at the end of the day, none of us know the answer to, besides Earl Watford, his agent, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm sure they've had, already progressing contract talks, stuff along those lines. But Earl Watford, I thought, was a pretty decent backup offensive lineman. The big question is that if you bring back Earl Watford, would he be competing with Michael Lidke for that, very versatile backup offensive lineman job? I would like to argue that you could keep both of them, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the Buccaneers picked between one or the other. And I don't know, maybe I would give Michael Lidke, the edge there, but I would also like Earl Watford back as well, especially if he takes the veteran minimum. That makes things all the more better. So yeah, Earl Watford, he's a pretty decent backup. He did a pretty decent job overall filling in for Alex Kappa when he suffered multiple injuries this past season for the Buccaneers, and I wouldn't mind him coming back at all. Bo Allen's an interesting one. Now, what would Bo Allen's price tag be? Because for the past 2 years, I believe he's made around $4 to $5 million. So would he be expecting the same amount? And if he is, would you be willing to pay him that amount? Now, Bo Allen, I believe he's the backup nose tackle right now behind Vita Vea. And, he's a very solid backup defensive tackle for the Buccaneers. And I think if the Buccaneers had a 4-3, he could even be a solid starting defensive tackle for the Buccaneers. But given the circumstances, given what's going on right now with the Buccaneers and their 3-4 defense, is it worth it to pay a backup nose tackle $4 to $5 million? I'm not sure. If he's willing to take a little bit less money, even better. I would recommend keeping him then. But at $4 to $5 million, I'm not sure. I might let him walk into free agency. I think that he's been very instrumental with, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers community and having his own foundations and stuff like that. But in terms of player, he's been a backup role player for the past couple of years for the Buccaneers, and $4 to $5 million is a lot for a backup, and I just don't know if it is worth it. Next person I want to talk about, Kevin Minter, and I really like Kevin Minter, guys. I think that he is a very solid backup linebacker. He did a great job filling in for Devin White when Devin White had that knee injury, and I think that he's a really, really good special teams player as well. I like Kevin Minter a lot. I think he fits this defense perfectly. He's still, the high 20s, low 30s in terms of his overall age, so he still has a few good years left in him, in my opinion, and I think that the Buccaneers should offer him $1 to $2 million to stay, maybe give him a 2-year deal, something like that. Even before Bruce Arians and his coaching staff got here, Kevin Minter was here, making plays. He got signed later on in the 2018 season, did some good enough stuff. The fact that the Buccaneers brought him back after bringing in Bruce Arians and company, it just made Kevin Minter all the more valuable to the team. And then during the 2019 season, he came in as a backup middle linebacker, really nice special teams player, and I think he did a pretty darn good job. Finally, the last 4 guys that I want to talk about in the high-end role players backups category is Carl Nassib, Breshad Perriman, Ryan Smith, and Peyton Barber. Let's start with Ryan Smith. And I know people have been saying, left, right, and center, oh, Ryan Smith's got to go. Ryan Smith sucks. He's not a good cornerback, and I completely understand that. But the thing that Ryan Smith is really good at is special teams. Ryan Smith is one of the better special teams players in the entire NFL, in my opinion. I've seen multiple times this year where teams have double, triple, and not quadruple teamed, but sometimes it feels like it, Ryan Smith on punt coverages because he's so effective of tackling the returner on punt coverages. It's absolutely insane. So while a lot of people criticize Ryan Smith for his cornerback play, and trust me, I completely understand that, you all have to admit that Ryan Smith is really darn good at special teams. So for that reasoning, I wouldn't mind bringing back Ryan Smith on a $1 to $2 million per year type of contract, however long you want to sign him. Maybe it's 1 year, maybe it's 2 years, whatever you want to do. I wouldn't mind Ryan Smith coming back and being, the special teams ace for the Buccaneers again for the next, 1, 2, maybe even more years if you want to give him that. But, I remember a time when we had Josh Robinson, Russell Shepard. Those guys were absolutely amazing. And Ryan Smith was with those guys, and he outlasted all of those guys because he was so good at special teams. The Buccaneers felt that they didn't need that many good special teams guys because Ryan Smith was good enough. So, yeah, Ryan Smith, I wouldn't mind him coming back and continuing his great play on special teams. The next guy I want to talk about is Peyton Barber. And guys, I've been saying this a lot this video, but I like Peyton Barber as a backup running back for this team. And I know people are going to say, this offseason, oh, the Buccaneers should sign this running back, or oh, the Buccaneers should sign that running back. I get that. I do. But for me personally, I trust Ronald Jones as a 3-down starting running back for this team. And that opinion, in my, I don't think that opinion is going to change for me throughout the entire offseason unless something crazy happens, like, David Johnson or something else. But not just, aside from the starting running back spot, I think Peyton Barber's a pretty solid backup running back. I liked what I saw from him this year. I thought that he fought for a lot of yards, continued to do some Peyton Barber things. The big thing that I would want to see from the Buccaneers if they decided to bring back Peyton Barber is just give more carries to Ronald Jones. Have him be your big main starting running back. Have him be your 3-down running back. I'm fine with Dario Mbawale. I'm fine with Peyton Barber, but, give Ronald Jones more carries. He deserves it. He is the best running back out of the 3, in my opinion. But Peyton Barber, I wouldn't mind the Buccaneers bringing him back as a backup running back. The big question comes into his price tag. What is Peyton Barber going to command in terms of a price tag? Will he go off into free agency and try and be a starting running back? What is going to happen with that? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But guys, honestly, I wrote down this number here. I would be fine with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers giving $3 to $4 million to Peyton Barber to be the backup running back. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think he is that solid of a backup running back. So, yeah, with everything being said and done here, Peyton Barber, I think that he is a solid backup that the Buccaneers should try and bring back to complement Ronald Jones. Finally, the last 2 guys I want to talk about, Carl Nassib and Breshad Perriman. Both these guys are probably going to be making very similar amounts of money. Both of them I expect to get around $6 million or more per year in their next contracts. Talking about Breshad Perriman first, I think that he needs to come back, okay? Because after him, we noticed that the Buccaneers wide receiver depth was really not good. Scotty Miller, he was just unfortunately getting hurt all the time. Justin Watson just seemed like he couldn't put it all together, unfortunately. And with the other wide receivers that the Buccaneers were bringing in, we didn't see really anything from them either. The only guy who did a significant amount of things after Mike Evans and Chris Godwin went down with injury was Breshad Perriman. So with all that being said, I'm fine with the Buccaneers bringing back Breshad Perriman on a $6 million per year contract. I know people are going to freak out and say, but James, he's only the third wide receiver on the team, but we saw how important that was to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down the stretch, so I would have no problems with Breshad Perriman coming back on that high of a price tag. I mean, they only had him on $4 million last year anyway, so it's not like it's that big of a pay upgrade, so I would be fine with that 100%. And then finally, Carl Nassib. This one's really interesting because this is the first scenario where I think that Carl Nassib's gonna just, be a victim of circumstance, because the Buccaneers have a lot of players to re-sign this offseason, and I think Carl Nassib, unfortunately, is just going to command a little bit too much money for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to pay out. Now, Carl Nassib's a very, very solid pass rusher. The past 2 years for the Buccaneers, he has had 6 sacks in a very, very, very limited capacity, and I think that he could be a full-time starting pass rusher, not just for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but for any team out there, which is why I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to lose Carl Nassib to free agency. I think that Carl Nassib is going to get at least $6 to $8 million per year in whatever contract he is given, and given all the Buccaneers, needs in terms of paying guys right now, Shaq Barrett, Ndamukong Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul, among others, I think Carl Nassib is unfortunately just going to get lost in the shuffle. I think that he will go out there and be a starting pass rusher for another team, and I think that he's going to get a lot of money. In fact, I think that he's going to get so much money, it's going to be too much money for the Buccaneers to give out for a guy who right now is just unfortunately a rotational pass guy. He could be a starter for this team, but the Buccaneers just have so many good pass rushers right now that Carl Nassib just gets put down on the depth chart, just enough to not justify the amount of money that he's probably going to make in free agency. Now we can get into the last group of the guys that I want to talk about, the starters, the long-term starters that the Buccaneers had last season that had a significant amount of impact on the team. First guy, Jameis Winston. I have talked about this at length in multiple videos now. If you want to go check them out, you can go see them actually in my 2 most recent videos here on the channel. But to make it short, I do think the Buccaneers will bring back Jameis Winston on the non-exclusive or exclusive franchise tag. That means $26.7 million, I believe, is the total of the franchise tag. And I also believe that that is the expected million per year that Spot Track has right now for Jameis Winston in his expected contract value. So, yeah, I think Jameis Winston will come back on some sort of tag. But moving on past Jameis Winston, next guy I want to talk about, DeMar Dodson. And, DeMar Dodson, he's 34 years old, and he definitely showed some signs of slowing down this past season. I don't know if you guys have watched my live stream reactions from week to week, reacting to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers games, but I was not the biggest fan of DeMar Dodson. I thought he got a lot of penalties, and he made a lot of, mistakes in terms of his overall blocking, also in terms of pass blocking and in run blocking. And I think that the Buccaneers should get a new starting right tackle for this team. I am, 100% on board with that. I think that that needs to happen. However, I would not be opposed to DeMar Dodson coming back in some form of a backup role. If you wanted to give DeMar Dodson $2.5 million to be a backup on this team, I would not have a problem with that. I think DeMar Dodson still could have a lot of value to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in terms of a mentor to a lot of the Buccaneers offensive linemen, if not all of them. He has a lot to offer in terms of mentorship, and he could still be a very, very capable backup offensive lineman, if not a fringe starter. I know I really crapped on DeMar Dodson a lot this year, and I still stand by a lot of what I said, but I still think DeMar Dodson could still be a very, very solid backup, and if you're only bringing him back on $2.5 million, that's not a whole lot of money in terms of paying a backup offensive lineman, and I would not be opposed to that kind of move, but I still think the Buccaneers should go out and get a new starting right tackle. 2 guys I want to talk about, Ndamukong Suh and Jason Pierre-Paul. Let's talk about Ndamukong Suh first. He is 33 years old right now. Good run stuffer and honestly pretty solid pass rusher overall. The big thing with Ndamukong Suh, what made him have an impact for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year was his run stopping ability. He did a very, very good job with Vita Vea and with William Golston in stopping the run. They were the best run stopping unit in the entire NFL, and that is something to hang your hat on. What a lot of people may not have noticed, though, is that Ndamukong Suh still had a fair amount of quarterback hits. He was ranking up there in the top of the rankings in terms of the overall team numbers. He was right up there with Shaq Barrett, among others. So Ndamukong Suh, while his sack numbers weren't necessarily there at all, he still got a lot of quarterback hits, and he still generated a lot of pressure to go along with his good run-stopping ability. The big thing that's going to be with Ndamukong Suh, as well as the other player I'm about to talk about here in a second, is price tag. Now, this most recent season in 2019, Ndamukong Suh made $9.25 million. You would expect, with the way he played this past season, an overall very solid year, that he would command a very similar amount. I've seen some people say, oh, give him $5 million and he'll play. I don't think that is necessarily the case. I still think that Suh showed that he had a lot to offer a lot of NFL teams in terms of being a starting defensive lineman in the NFL, be it defensive tackle, be it defensive end, depending on if you're playing in a 4-3 or a 3-4. Suh can still go, so I think that is going to keep his price range relatively high, and I still think that he could make, $8 million, maybe $7.5 million. I'm not sure if he would make $9 million again, but I certainly think it is definitely a possibility. So with all that being said, it is a lot of money, but the coaching staff does love themselves some Ndamukong Suh. He kept his nose clean, which definitely blew me away. I was not expecting that at all, so I will stand corrected on that matter. I definitely was proven wrong with Ndamukong Suh's overall character throughout the season, and he still played a pretty good season overall. So it would be a very expensive price tag, $7 to $9 million potentially, but I think that Ndamukong Suh coming back would be very beneficial to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front seven. Another player who could be very beneficial to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front seven is Jason Pierre-Paul, JPP. Much like Ndamukong Suh, he is getting up there in age. He is 31 years old right now currently. Still really good. He had 8.5 sacks, and I believe he only played in 10 games for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as he, broke his freaking neck before the season started. So the fact that Jason Pierre-Paul was playing football at all was a freaking miracle. So Jason Pierre-Paul, he came back, had 8.5 sacks in very limited capacity, while, probably still extremely hurt given the circumstances of a neck injury. And then also last year, he had 12.5 sacks. He just continues to be a consistently threatening pass rusher for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The coaching staff, much like Ndamukong Suh, loves Jason Pierre-Paul. They love the leadership that he brings. They love the overall style of play and the overall efficiency and productivity that he brings to the Buccaneers as well. And this one would also be a top priority signing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But much like in the case of Ndamukong Suh, price tag is going to be a question. I would not be surprised if Jason Pierre-Paul got $8 to $10 million per year in whatever contract he is given. Now, the Buccaneers would have had Jason Pierre-Paul under contract for next season as well, but earlier this year they restructured his contract, had it end this season, and I'm sure they'll renegotiate some type of contract moving forward. I don't even think that the Buccaneers or Jason Pierre-Paul himself foresaw the crazy efficiency that he had coming back from his neck injury. So that is definitely going to ramp up the intensity of negotiations between the two parties. And I'm being honest with you guys right now, given the price tags of Ndamukong Suh and Jason Pierre-Paul, both of them do have a chance to go out into free agency and join other teams. I will, not discredit that or say that is not possible. That is definitely possible. They could both go out and go to different teams and, get $9 to $10 million each, something along those lines. But I also would like to think that the Buccaneers would pay both of those price tags. Bruce Arians, he said, in one of his last press conferences of the year, that he wants to keep the front seven together as much as possible. And two of the biggest guys from the front seven are Ndamukong Suh and Jason Pierre-Paul. So with that being said, $8 to $10 million price tag, the age is up there as well, all of this stuff, but I think the Buccaneers are going to try and bring back Jason Pierre-Paul. And I know earlier this year, I said, I think he'll go into free agency. I'm flipping the script on that. I stand corrected on that. I think that he will be brought back to the team. Finally, the last guy I want to talk about, Shaq Barrett. Bring him back. Bring back Shaq Barrett. I believe right now, according to Spot Track, his expected value is $15.7 million per year. Give it to him. Give it to him. If he asks for more, give him more. Give Shaq Barrett everything he wants. I've seen some people talk as high as $19 to $20 million. give it to him. And I know it's like, James, you're talking crazy here. You're being biased for Shaq Barrett. I get that. I do. 19 and a half sacks, Buccaneers sack record. That doesn't come around every day, and Shaq Barrett did that. He did that in his first year with the team after a role player type of, situation that he had with the Denver Broncos. So the fact that he was able to do that was pretty darn impressive. And guys, I'm not stupid. I'm not blind to the fact that, Shaq Barrett isn't going to be able to produce 19 and a half sacks every single year. I understand that completely. He's not going to be the sack champion every year for the NFL, but I still think that he can get you, if not double-digit sacks every year, pretty darn close to it. 8.5 sacks, 9 sacks, 9.5 sacks. I think that he can produce that on a year-to-year basis with the Buccaneers, with Todd Bowles' system. So, with all that being said, whatever the amount is, bring back Shaq Barrett. I've been saying it all year. This man needs to be on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the next 6+ years. You have him retire as a Buck, and I would be one happy camper. Guys, that's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Very long videos I've been uploading lately, so hope you guys all enjoy it. But if you're new, go ahead and subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and hit the like button and leave a comment down below on what you think about all of the players that I have mentioned. Which ones would you like to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers re-sign, and for how much? And which players would you not like to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers re-sign? Let me know what you think about all of this down in the comments section below. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed. We are on the way to 5,000 subscribers. We are getting closer every single day, and as the offseason progresses, I think we even have a chance to reach 6,000 subscribers. So fun times are ahead. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed. But until the next video or the next live stream, I'll see you guys in the next one. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.